A major purpose of my videos is to reveal how rejection of God and His Word leads to the corruption of our culture. DEI is a prime example. It rejects God's truth and replaces it with the teachings of the cult leader Karl Marx. What is DEI in theory? If you are not familiar with it, DEI is basically a program established in a university or corporation that seeks to bring diversity, equity, and inclusivity or inclusion to the workplace. When advocates of DEI want to implement the first of these, diversity, they mean the inclusion of groups that they feel are underrepresented in certain venues of our society. For example, if a university faculty has a lower percentage of Hispanic professors than the percentage of Hispanics in our society, they seek to raise the number of Latino professors in that department. There are certain minorities they view as oppressed: African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, women, and the LGBTQ alphabet of victims. When they use the word equity, they do not mean equality of opportunity, they mean equality of outcomes. This is almost always measured by income. So if one of the eligible victim groups has a lower income than others, then the priests and priestesses of DEI conclude those groups are victims of oppression and seek to raise the incomes of the victim groups. The I in DEI stands for inclusion, which means including the stated victims into participation in areas of society where they seem to be underrepresented. The I in DEI stands for inclusion, which means including the stated victims into participation in areas of society where they seem to be underrepresented. Practically every major university has or has had a DEI office, and many major corporations have or have had diversity officers. The same is true of many governmental bureaucracies. A Harvard study concluded that American institutions spend $8 billion a year on DEI. We've looked at DEI in theory. What is it in reality? National Review had a good summary, quote, "The ideology behind DEI teaches that American society is a rigged system in which the oppressors, mainly white people, particularly men, use law, culture, and institutions to subjugate the oppressed. Pursuing social justice requires ceaseless struggle against these unjust structures. So the highest calling one can pursue is that of an activist who seeks to tear down the oppressive order." End quote. According to Christopher Rufo in City Journal, quote, "At first glance, a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion might seem laudable, but DEI employs a propagandistic language to conceal its real intentions. It is, in fact, the opposite of what it appears to be." End quote. It is, in theory, Marxist. The world is divided into oppressed and oppressor classes. It ends up being reverse racism. If you are a white male, you are by definition an evil person, part of the oppressor class, and you should be ashamed of yourself. It is divisive. It pits social groups against each other. It is a weapon the left uses to punish those it disagrees with. I would argue in summary that DEI is the failed attempt to impose a cultic religious belief on a university and the rest of America. In pursuit of its own idea of social justice, DEI programs have developed a long list of so-called oppressors who do not qualify for DEI assistance. Among those are Christians, white males, white people in general, but also Asians, Jews, all of our successful minority groups. That is, they are successful in American terms, which inevitably means higher incomes. Now we come to the most important consideration: why is DEI the bitter enemy of the Christian faith? It is fundamentally anti-Christian because it holds a false doctrine that runs counter to the teaching of the Bible. It judges people by their group and not as God does as individuals. It offers the standard Marxist argument that your group is the most important thing about you. God says the most important thing about you is your personal relationship with Jesus Christ. DEI decides which groups should be favored and which should be punished. As a consequence, it denies opportunities to qualified people and hands them to less qualified individuals who happen to be in the favored group. The Bible strongly and relentlessly attacks this false doctrine. God judges us as individuals. The group you are in means nothing to God. One of the most revealing things about the Old Testament is that God judged individual Jews by the same standards he judges everyone else. You cannot stand before God in judgment and argue that you are in a certain group and therefore should be favored by God. In recent years, DEI has been damaged, and this is a triumph of the Christian view of the world. We are witnessing today the unraveling of the DEI industrial complex. In the last election, the voters rejected it. They did not vote according to their group, but according to individual preferences. This is a triumph of the Christian worldview and a defeat for Marxist progressives. And the new President of the United States issued an executive order abolishing DEI programs in the government and in every educational institution that receives money from the federal government. In other words, all of them. Even the New York Times is having doubts. It recently ran an opinion column entitled, "DEI is not working. We need a new approach." Yes, we do. Lots of companies are rolling back or ending DEI. John Deere, Harley-Davidson, Tractor Supply, Ford Motor Company, Facebook, and many others have abandoned their DEI programs. Same for many universities. The University of Michigan, the University of Florida, Ohio State University, and many others have abolished DEI. A word of caution is due here. DEI is a powerful religious ideal. It is a means by which Marxist progressives give meaning to their lives. It will be difficult to stamp out, just as pagan superstitions hung on in medieval Europe for centuries and are still around today. For example, many universities have already renamed their DEI offices and call them something else, but they still hold the same religious convictions. The Christian faith will always have powerful competitors. In the West, its greatest competition comes not from other world religions, but from Marxist progressivism. It is a powerful religion. But Christianity continues to triumph over its enemies. That is, of course, because it is driven by the Holy Spirit of the true God. We must continually be aware of our enemies' schemes, but always mindful of the ultimate victory we have in Christ.